Hello and welcome. The topic for today's lecture is the advantages and disadvantages of the biopsychosocial model vis-a-vis the biomedical model. In today's lecture, we shall first briefly introduce the biomedical model and briefly discuss its basic principles. We'll also talk about the biopsychosocial model and consider its fundamental principles as well. And finally, we'll address the advantages and the disadvantages of the biopsychosocial model vis-a-vis the biomedical model by way of a comparative analysis. To begin with, let's talk about the biomedical model. It has been the predominant model in the domain of health for centuries now. Biomedical model is based on the premise that specific etiological causes underlie all diseases and the precise treatment of the causes will make the symptoms go away. It is reductionist in form, seeking an explanation of dysfunction in the invariant biological structures and processes. It privileges hard biological explanations on the expense of the social, cultural, and biographical explanations. In its clinical mode, this dominant model of medical reasoning implies that diseases exist as distinct entities. Those entities are revealed through the inspection of signs and symptoms. The individual patient is a passive site of disease manifestation, and the diseases are to be understood as categorical departures or deviations from normality. The biomedical model is based on Cartesian dualism that has dominated the Western thought for centuries. René Descartes was a 17th century French philosopher who is often regarded as the father of modern philosophy. He is credited to be the foundational thinker in what would later develop into the European Enlightenment. Descartes, in his sixth meditation, likens the human body to the machine composed of bones, veins, nerves, muscles, and skin. In the Cartesian paradigm, the body and the mind or the soul are independent entities. Although the mind is housed in the body, Descartes believed that the body and the mind were ontologically different entities that communicated through the pineal gland. Now, before Descartes, most healers treated patients within the context of their social and spiritual environment. However, the reception of his philosophy in the European intellectual culture changed this situation profoundly. His strict division between mind and body led physicians to concentrate on the body machine alone and to neglect the psychological, social, and environmental aspects of the illness. The biomedical model rests on a number of assumptions. For instance, all diseases are caused by a specific agent such as a germ, a virus, or a parasite, by trauma or by disruption of the processes at cellular or molecular level. All illnesses and all symptoms and signs arise from an underlying abnormality within the body, usually in the functioning or structure of specific organs, and this abnormality is referred to as a disease. Diseases are universal biological conditions resulting from somatic lesions or dysfunctions. From the biomedical perspective, the reality should be seen through the glasses of hard sciences alone. The only reliable knowledge is scientific knowledge. The patient is the passive target of medical intervention since the body is regarded as a machine and it is the body that needs repairing. Restoring health requires only the use of medical technology and advanced scientific procedures. Causes of health problems are located within the individual human body at the biological level. Each disease is seen as having specific biological causes. This is called the doctrine of specific etiology. and only medically trained professionals have the expertise to identify and diagnose health problems. Now we shall discuss the biopsychosocial model. The term biopsychosocial was coined by Roy Grinker. In 1977, Angel developed the hitherto undifferentiated and fuzzy notion into a coherent model. The model was based on the general systems theory (GST), originally posited by Weiss and von Bertalanffy. Angel draws the idea from the systems theory approach that nature is hierarchically arranged continuum with larger and more complex units emerging from the smaller and less complex units. All levels of organization in an entity are linked to each other hierarchically and are therefore conceptualized as interconnected, wherein change at one level affects some sort of change at all levels. And according to Angel, the relationship between the levels is based on certain principles. For instance, each level in the system is relatively autonomous. Thus, a cell can be studied just as a cell. Each level also depends on the level immediately below it. Thus, a cell is composed of nuclei, mitochondria, and all sorts of other organelles. And each level is also a constituent of a higher system. Thus, cells organize together to become tissues and organs, etc. Therefore, in the continuity of natural systems, every unit is at the very same time both a whole and a part. Thus, it can be understood from the principles of systems theory as explained by Angel that higher level properties emerge from lower level systems and cannot be predicted from studying the lower level alone. Also, the principle of top-down causation, namely that higher levels can influence lower levels, can also be drawn from the theory. Predicated on a systems approach, the biopsychosocial model dispenses with the scientifically archaic principles of dualism and reductionism and replaces linear causality with models of multiple and reciprocal causality. Health, disease, and disability are thus conceptualized in terms of the relative intactness and functioning of each component system on each hierarchical level. Overall health reflects a higher level of intra- and intersystemic harmony. Drawing upon the systems theory, Angel maintained that illness or injury exists within several interconnected systems. Therefore, while dealing with illness and injury, the total situation and many factors at all levels need to be considered. The causation of any clinical condition, whether medical or psychiatric, must not be seen narrowly as just biological, but more widely as a condition with psychological and social components that have implications on a patient's understanding of his or her condition as well as the clinical course of that condition. In this way, Angel set the foundations for a new biopsychosocial model by which he supports the integration of biological, psychological, and social factors in the study, prevention, and treatment of disease. The need for a new model became apparent due to many limitations of the biomedical model. The biopsychosocial model overcame many shortcomings of the reductionist biomedical model. The researchers and practitioners adopted a more comprehensive biopsychosocial model because of several reasons. For example, in the biomedical approach, there is an overemphasis on the aberrations and illness, while the means to achieve healthy outcomes are mostly ignored. The biomedical model also ignores the psychological and social factors influencing the development and treatment of illness. In contrast to the biomedical model, however, the biopsychosocial model not only provides a cure for the disease but also helps in maintaining a healthy life, and the wider perspectives involving patients' expectations, preferences, and social environment are also considered here. Psychological and social factors are considered alongside the biological ones in the diagnosis and management of the illnesses and the assessment of outcomes. The biopsychosocial model does not consider health and illness as mutually exclusive states because both are considered to affect the functioning of an individual. Health and disease are considered as the interaction of three factors: the biological or physiological factors, psychological or mental factors, and the social factors. The model has been adopted as prevailing paradigm for research practice and training within the field of health psychology and related disciplines such as behavioral medicine and psychosomatic medicine. As Melchert in 2007 puts it, the biopsychosocial approach is a comprehensive and integrative framework for understanding human development, health, and functioning. It's based on the perspective that humans are inherently biopsychosocial organisms in which the biological, psychological, and social dimensions are inextricably intertwined. Few medical conditions could be interpreted as being the so-called one microbe, one illness nature. Usually, there are multiple interacting causes and contributing factors that lead to an illness. And sometimes, the effects of an illness on one stage may become further causes as the illness progresses. These observations set the stage for models of circular causality, which describes how a series of feedback loops sustain a specific pattern of pathological behavior over time. The biopsychosocial model attempts to understand these complex, recursive, and emergent properties of systems and to find interrelated proximal causes that might be changed with the right set of interventions. For instance, medication and family support, depression screening, and cholesterol level reduction for heart attack, exercise, anger management, etc. While the biomedical model, on the other hand, focuses on pathophysiology and other biological approaches to disease, the biopsychosocial model emphasizes the importance of understanding human health and illness within their fullest context. The biological body is pivot of the biomedical model that concentrates on disease rather than the whole person. The reasons for sickness are not considered to be paramount to describe. The condition itself is the focus of medical attention, and medications are considered the proper management. This structure of the medical intervention centers on the organic determinants of health, and as a result, social and psychological concerns are excluded from the intervention. As medicine expanded within the 20th century, there was profound stress on clinics and well-being experts to analyze diseases precisely and to find cures and medications. The biomedical model, since it bases its research on the empirical observation and the inductive method, has undoubtedly helped in gaining an accurate understanding of the organic nature and causes of a large number of illnesses. Numerous therapeutic breakthroughs and medicinal advancements have happened because of the biomedical model of health. When individuals think of well-being care, the first thing they ordinarily think of is the biomedical model. This approach to well-being care has been dominant for many years and has without any doubt played an enormous role in prolonging the life expectancy of people. All the same, the model seems to have run out of favor with practitioners and researchers who now are adopting the more comprehensive and theoretically sophisticated biopsychosocial model. The biopsychosocial model operates on two principles: eclecticism and prevention. Angel considered biopsychosocial model as encompassing the information from multiple levels of reality. That is, the health professional seeks to integrate data from human or psychological level with data from the biological level and the data from the psychological level to construct the biopsychosocial description of each patient. Each level in the hierarchy operates according to a unique system. For example, tissues and cells at the biological level, perception and experience at the psychological level, and attribution of meaning at the social level. All three levels develop an eclectic approach wherein patient-doctor communication becomes a stepping stone to integrating the various levels and understanding illness and health-seeking behavior. The biopsychosocial model works on the premise prevention is better than cure. The biopsychosocial model seeks to prevent the diseases in the first place. For example, any person suffering from diabetes should maintain a healthy lifestyle, exercising daily, avoiding high sugar foods, etc. The biomedical model and the biopsychosocial model also differ according to the physician-patient relationship and the degree of patient's participation. In the biomedical model, the physician has an active role and the patient has a passive role. In clear terms, the doctor directs medications and trauma, if any, and the patient cooperates by taking medicines on all times. In the biopsychosocial model, however, the communication is more bilateral and open. Now we shall discuss some of the advantages of the more comprehensive biopsychosocial model of medicine. The biopsychosocial model has clinical implications in providing better assessment, diagnosis, and hence better treatment. It takes into consideration the smaller picture of any biological problems at an individual level, as well as the bigger picture of psychological issues and the effect of society has on that individual and on his or her situation. The cure, recovery, and good health are no longer completely in the hands of medical experts, but are in fact partly in control of the patients themselves. The treatment approach involves shared decision-making and patient-centered medicine. The approach gives a better understanding to the patient of his or her own condition by providing a wider perspective of psychological and social factors along with the biological ones, through which the condition or illness is developed and maintained. When using this approach, patients rarely feel helpless or out of control. The biopsychosocial model suggests that patient perceptions of health and threat of disease, as well as barriers in patient's social and cultural environment, appear to influence the likelihood that a patient will engage in health-promoting or treatment behaviors such as medication taking, proper diet or nutrition, and engaging in physical activity. In many chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, social cognitive variables pertaining to the psychosocial aspects of the biopsychosocial model appear to influence engagement in healthy behaviors and adherence to prescribed medical regimens. The treatment or therapy designed by biopsychosocial model of healthcare is tailor-made in order to suit the particular patient's physiological, psychological, and social needs and wants. The biopsychosocial framework not only requires that more information be gathered during consultation, but also includes the integration of professional services through integrated multidisciplinary teams to provide better care and address the patient's needs at all three levels. As such, the biopsychosocial model has been a growing trend in healthcare across the United States and other European countries. the model provides a better understanding of healthy functioning and the meaning of all-round development to an individual. Dramatic advances have been achieved in understanding how physiological, psychological, and social influences interact to affect widely varied health and disease processes. For example, the etiology and progression of cardiovascular disease is now broadly viewed as stemming from psychosocial influences such as hostility, depression, stress, social isolation, in addition to genetic, physiological, and behavioral determinants. Similarly, stress and emotions are believed to play a role in cancer etiology and progression. The biopsychosocial model advocates for good mental and emotional health to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Those with mental illness can also gain a sense of self-awareness. Mental illness sufferers can understand their mental health as an entity with several parts that function together. It also broadens the way we view mental illness by no longer looking at it as a black or white issue. The biopsychosocial perspective also challenges the stigma on mental illness by enabling people to realize that anyone can suffer from a mental illness because we all have biological, social, and psychological influences in our lives. To truly understand someone's mental health, we must consider all the factors affecting them both positively and negatively in order to get a better picture of their overall health and well-being. The biopsychosocial model, in providing an understanding of physiological, psychological, and social influences, helps an individual in gaining control over his healthy functioning as well as disease prevention. The model has also helped in facilitation of interdisciplinary research. While taking a broad view of health and specifically disease causation, the biopsychosocial model exists in the space where psychology, sociology, and biology overlap. Thus, it impels researchers towards interdisciplinary thinking and collaboration. The model has been constantly developing in connection with recent advances in health sciences, psychology, and sociology. The model is developing and accumulating new empirical facts in different domains and improving the methodology as well. Given the widespread influence of biopsychosocial model and associated theoretical and empirical developments, the major funding institutes such as the NIH, National Institute of Health in the United States, have advocated for the integrative and transdisciplinary research efforts. The focus is on multiple pathways to diverse health outcomes and the research that integrates information from molecular, cellular, psychosocial, and community levels. This model, of course, provides a better explanation of diseases. Illness and disease are believed to emerge and progress as a function of dynamic intertwinement of biological predispositions, psychological variables, and social processes. The biopsychosocial theory posits that none of the factors on its own is sufficient to create health or illness. However, what's really critical is the interaction between them. The biopsychosocial model also provides a coherent explanation for diseases or physical illnesses that are caused without any apparent physiological reason, that is, the psychosomatic disorders. And according to Engel and Romano, the biopsychosocial perspective is more appropriate when analyzing the causes of mental illness. This model introduces the idea that there are biological, psychological, and social determinants to mental health. This idea links the outside world to someone's biology and the psyche. It also involves our consciousness, sentiments, and behaviors. The biopsychosocial model can explain how and why psychological disorders or social factors can sometimes result in physiological problems. The model helps explaining why some people are more prone to illness than others and how some people who are seemingly healthy develop illness. The biopsychosocial perspective gives evidence that although someone can be mentally healthy at some point in their life, they can still experience mental illness if their biopsychosocial balance is disturbed. There are biopsychosocial models for different illnesses like pain disorder, phobia, chronic illnesses, mental disorders, substance abuse disorders, etc. The contrasts between biomedical and the biopsychosocial models can be best understood in their respective answers to some basic questions regarding health and illness. For instance, the first question: what is the approach of the model to health and illness? While the biomedical model is reductionist in its approach, the biopsychosocial model is holistic. Question number 2. What causes the illness? According to the biomedical model, illness is caused by a specific reason like a microbe, pathogen, or dysfunction of any organ. The biopsychosocial model, however, believes that illness is caused by a multitude of factors operating on all three levels, that is biological, psychological, and social levels. Question number 3. Who is responsible for the illness? Since illness is seen because of a microbe or pathogen, the individual isn't seen as responsible for the illness in the biomedical model. In biopsychosocial model, however, an individual isn't seen as a passive victim, rather held at least partially responsible for their health and illness. Question number 4. How should illnesses be treated? According to the biomedical model, the organic changes that have occurred should be treated by specific medical interventions. However, the biopsychosocial model believes that the whole person should be treated rather than just the affected area. Question number 5. Who is responsible for treatment? In the biomedical model, the medical practitioners are responsible for treatment of illness, but in biopsychosocial model, the patient isn't seen as merely a victim of the illness, but rather plays an active role in his or her own treatment. The responsibility takes the form of regular medicine taking, diet exchange, regular exercise, etc. Question number 6. What is the relationship between mind and body? Biomedical model believes in the Cartesian dualism, that is, the mind and body are separate, whereas the biopsychosocial model is based on the monistic philosophy. What is the nature of patient-physician relationship? In biomedical model, the physician has an active role and the patient has a passive role. In clear terms, the doctor directs medications and the patient cooperates by taking medicines on time. The biopsychosocial model, however, proposes that arriving at a correct diagnosis is only one of the many parts of the clinician's task. They also insist on interpreting the illness from an intersubjective perspective by giving patients the space to articulate their concerns, expectations, etc. Ultimately, the biomedical and the biopsychosocial models mustn't be considered as competitive but complementary to each other. Although the biomedical model has of late been supplanted by the biopsychosocial model as the currently favored theoretical framework of the medical establishment, the biomedical model has myriad medical breakthroughs in its kitty that the biopsychosocial model still cannot match. The biomedical model has made landmark advances in medicine. Without the biomedical model of health, there would be no X-rays, antimicrobials, or penicillin. But on the other hand, the biomedical model has also resulted in iatrogenesis. Iatrogenesis refers to the illnesses caused by medicine. Many researchers have brought to light the fact that it's not only medicine overplayed its own efficacy, but it also paradoxically contributed to production of certain illnesses. Even Engel, the pioneer of biopsychosocial model, acknowledged that the medical research has made landmark advances under the biomedical paradigm, but he criticized its excessively narrow focus for leading clinicians to regard the patients as objects and ignoring the possibility that subjective experience of the patient was amenable to scientific study. Engel championed his vision that not only as scientific thought, but also as an ideology that tried to reverse the disempowerment of the patients. The advantages of the biopsychosocial model are found in its holistic approach and inclusion of diverse perspectives on health and disease. But there are also certain problems with the model, and one of the most cited problems is its pluralistic approach, where all approaches have won. The goal of science is analytic understanding, and the essence of analytical understanding is to break down the world in its component parts. In contrast to this, the biopsychosocial model seems to believe that anything goes. Another related criticism exists on the pragmatic side of things. By being all-inclusive, Gamey in 2010 argues that the physician who adopts the biopsychosocial model is in real danger of losing clear boundaries regarding their knowledge and expertise. Despite these very general criticisms, the biopsychosocial model has found its way into the medical profession and is being used as treatment model in much of the developed world. And with that, we conclude our today's lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it well. Thank you.